Hey, welcome to Dating Advice for Men Who Love Women. So, how can you be the most interesting man a woman has ever met? So, let's say you're having your first conversation with a woman, or you're on your first or second date with her. How can you be more interesting? Well, beyond kind of becoming a secret agent or flying around in one of those really cool wingsuits, there are a lot of things that you can do to be more interesting. But there is one really big key that makes you instantly more interesting and attractive to a woman. And it's going to make you really stand out to a woman compared to a lot of other guys that she goes on dates with. And the really cool thing about this key is that it also makes things easier for you and puts less pressure on you. So not only does this make you more attractive and more interesting, it also makes things easier for you. And I love things like that can make everything smoother for you. So what is this big key that makes you the most interesting man that a woman has ever met, or at least makes you more interesting and attractive than you are without doing it? Well, it might sound simple, but it's just listening to her talk instead of talking a lot yourself. Most guys have this frame of mind that they somehow have to convince the woman they're talking to that she should like him. And what you want to do is flip that where she's at least convincing you a little bit too. And here's the most ironic thing about this. If you just encourage a woman to talk a lot about herself and her life and the things that she cares about and she wants to talk about, she actually feels like she knows you better. Guys think that they need to share every little thing about themselves for a woman to kind of get to know him and like him more. It's actually the opposite. The more things she shares about herself and her life with you, the more she feels like she knows you, even though she's revealing things about herself and you're not telling her a whole lot about you. That's kind of counterintuitive, but that's how it works. And she feels more attracted to you. You're more mysterious because you're not revealing every little detail about yourself right away. You're kind of slowly giving her things about yourself while she's sharing a lot about herself. That's kind of the dynamic that we want to set up. And it's actually a lot easier for you because you don't have to think of the most perfect thing to say next. Just get her talking and encourage her to keep talking as much as possible. Here's the key. When you're having a conversation with a woman, for the most part, as a general guideline, she should be talking 60 to 80% of the time. I'm going to say that one more time. When you are having a conversation with a woman you want to date, she should be talking 60 to 80% of the time. So your job in a conversation with a woman is basically to lead the conversation to different places and then encourage her to talk a lot. So most guys think like, oh, what should I say to get a woman to like me? How can I say the right things? And yeah, it is kind of important to say the right things in some certain circumstances, of course. But it's much more important that she's talking a lot. And again, most men out there miss this point, and they're just consistently trying to tell her a lot of stuff about themselves and why they're so cool. And we're not going to do that. We're going to let her tell us why she's so cool. And we're going to be genuinely interested in knowing what makes her a really amazing person. And that's why you are so interesting to her and so attractive to her. So remember, when you're interested, you are more interesting. And if you're trying too hard to convince her that you're cool, you're less interesting. So from now on, we're going to encourage her to talk a lot, and we're just going to talk 20 to 40% of the time instead of trying to dominate the conversation and convince her to like us. And so how can we actually implement this when we're talking to a woman? Well, first of all, number one, you want to make sure you establish attraction first in a conversation. So when I talk about listening to a woman, I don't mean that you should be her kind of friend zone guy that she comes to for a shoulder to cry on when something bad happens with some other guy, that she's just talking to you as a friend. There needs to be some kind of attraction dynamic in there, some male-female dynamic conversation. So you should be playfully teasing her, you should be bantering back and forth with her, and you should establish that attraction part first. Put a little spice in that conversation first before you start listening to her for an hour. Okay, so you don't want to just listen as a friend. You want to make sure you also have that male-female dynamic set up as well. And then number two, once that attraction is established, Then you want to ask her open-ended questions and let her talk a lot. So let's say you've been playfully teasing her a little bit, you've been bantering back and forth, and she's having fun with you. Now you switch into open-ended question mode and kind of get to know her a little bit better and let her talk a lot. And so basically you don't want to ask her yes or no questions or questions that have a one-word answer. So an example of an open-ended question is something like, if you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would that be and why? Or if you hit the lottery jackpot tomorrow and you never had to work again, what would you do then and why? Or if you could be any animal, what would you be and why? Whereas a yes or no question is kind of like, do you like blue? Do you like Nirvana? Do you like sushi? Yes, yes, no, yes, no, yet. You want to ask her open-ended questions that allow her to talk for a longer period of time. And then you can even ask her follow-up questions based on her answers that let her talk even more. So you're going to ask her open-ended questions and you're going to let her talk a lot once you've established some attraction first. And then after that, you're also going to share back a little bit. So if she asks you a question back, which is kind of normal if she's interested in you too, you can share back a little bit too. Just remember that you should be talking about 20 to 40% of the time and not dominating the conversation. And once you finish sharing your interesting story or what you have to say, then you get back to asking her another open-ended question and letting her talk more. So of course you're going to share back a little bit. Just always keep in mind that she should be talking more than you. And then next, number 4, even when you're kind of getting to know her and you're in this phase of she's talking a lot, you still want to keep some playful teasing sprinkled in when it's appropriate. So if she shares something that's kind of vulnerable, you don't want to tease her about that. But if she's talking about something where you can playfully tease her, you want to keep some of that spice in your conversation so that you're not in danger of falling into that friend zone and it's still an attractive conversation. So when it's appropriate and when you have a good opportunity, you can playfully tease her about something that she said or some kind of idea that comes up from something that she said. Just don't do it when she's sharing something vulnerable with you. So when the timing is right, keep some playful teasing always sprinkled into your conversations with the woman. And then related to that, in terms of keeping that attraction dynamic going as well, when you're listening to her, you don't want to do what's called pecking. So you don't want to, when she's talking, lean into the conversation. And then when you're talking, you lean back. And then she's talking, so you lean forward to hear her better. And then when you're talking, you lean back. And then you lean forward and you lean. That's called pecking. And we don't want to do that. You just want to sit back, relax, and enjoy her talking. And you can talk louder or ask her to talk louder or sit closer to you if you prefer. But don't lean forward to hang on every word that she says. So you should be actively listening to her. And you should be able to recall what she said later and play off of it and remember it and bring it up on the next date. You should listen to her actively and be able to take a test on what she said. However, you don't want to be leaning in to get her every single word and be like kind of getting those scraps on the floor. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy listening to her talk about herself and her life. That's basically your job. And then play off of that. Share some interesting thing that you thought of based on what she said. Then ask her another question and have fun with it. Try to have fun getting to know her and listening to her talk. If you do that, you're going to be very interesting and attractive to a woman. And then next, number 5, you want to let her tell you why she is amazing. Again, the less you try to convince her that you're amazing, the more amazing she's going to think you are. It's counterintuitive how that works. The less you try to convince her, the more she thinks you're awesome. And what you want to do is let her show you why she's so awesome. And if you just make that one little switch in your mind, you're going to do a lot better and you're going to be more interesting and attractive. And then lastly, number 6, once you're in a long-term relationship with a woman, you want to listen to her even more. Listen, if you can't listen to a woman for 5 to 10 minutes a day, then you shouldn't be with her. So once she's your girlfriend or your wife, give her a few minutes a day where she can just talk about whatever she wants and you're just going to listen there. And you're going to actively listen to her, but at the same time, You're not going to always try to solve the problem that she's talking about. So this isn't universally true, but a lot of times women like to work out problems themselves just by talking about it with you. And they're not necessarily looking for you to solve that problem. And men really tend not to do that as much in general. So keep that in mind when you're listening to her after she's your girlfriend or your wife. Just listen to her and just say things like, yeah, I understand how you could feel that way. Or, yeah, I'm with you. That's very interesting. Or, you know what? You're so intelligent and capable. I'm sure that you'll figure something out. Now, sometimes it's fine to share your opinion with her or to help her solve that problem. And if she asks you to share your opinion or to solve that problem or to help her solve that problem, then go ahead and offer that. Just don't come in with the attitude that you're going to try to solve that problem instead of just listening to her. So you should default to just listening to her talk and then kind of validating what she said and not necessarily trying to solve that. And if you master that skill, then she's going to really, really like talking to you, and she's going to be more attracted to you as well, and you're going to be able to maintain her interest in you for a longer amount of time. Okay, so once you're in a relationship, listen even more, and without trying to solve every single problem that she's talking about. Just let her work it out in her own mind as she's talking through it with you, for the most part. All right, and then when it comes to your first couple of conversations with a woman, there are a few more things that you can do to be more interesting in that conversation. And the first one is using cold reads instead of just asking her interview questions. So interview questions would be stuff like, what do you do for a living? Where are you from? Do you have any brothers and sisters, etc.? And it's fine to ask those questions. It's normal. You can ask them. She can ask them to you. It's a normal part of a conversation when you're getting to know someone, whether it's a networking event or you're on a date. However, it makes it a little more interesting, more fun, more attractive, and you're starting to establish attraction if you use what's called a cold read instead, at least once or twice when you first talk to a woman. So a cold read is basically when you make a guess about something about her instead of asking her a question about it. So for example, instead of asking her, where are you from? You could just guess and say that, like, oh, you're from Nebraska, aren't you? Or instead of asking her, hey, what do you do for a living? You could say, hey, you're a nurse, aren't you? Now, here's the interesting thing about cold reads. If you are correct about what you guessed, she's going to want to know how you knew that about her already. And that already makes the conversation more interesting. She wants to know how you knew that. Wow, that's interesting. And if you're wrong, she's going to want to know why you thought that about her. And that's interesting. Now she's interested in why you thought that, which makes you interesting and makes the conversation more interesting and more fun and more attractive. This is a very simple thing that you can do. It's a very easy switch, and it works really well. And then when she says, oh, no, I'm actually an accountant. Why did you think I was a nurse? Then you can say, oh, you just kind of have that kind of caring vibe about you. Seems like that. Just a guess. Or if she says, no, I'm from California. Why do you think I'm from Nebraska? You can say, oh, you just kind of have that Nebraska vibe a little bit. And then you can even play off that a little bit. You can tease her kind of like, oh, you know what they say about California girls, don't they? Which doesn't mean anything, but now she's wondering what that means, and now she's interested in what you think about that, and then you say, oh, I can't really tell you, and then you move the conversation forward. So to make yourself and your conversations with a woman more interesting, use some cold reads instead of just only asking her interview questions. And then number 2, play conversational games. Women generally love to play conversational games, and it's more fun for you too. Instead of just having like an interrogation, you're like the Spanish Inquisition asking her questions or like putting her through a deposition. Play a game. Love is light and playful. It's not serious and heavy. That's a myth that's in our society, and it's one of the biggest problems that we have. Love is actually light and playful. Heavy, serious things destroy romantic attraction. So play conversational games. Make it fun. Make it more interesting. And an example of a really simple conversational game is just asking her, all right, so I have a question for you. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? And then when she answers, you can ask her another question. Okay, So if you could be any other animal besides that, what would you be and why? And then you say, okay, this is the last time, I promise. If you couldn't be either of those first two animals, what animal would you be and why? And then she answers, and then you say, do you want to know what that means? She says, yeah, of course I do. Then you say, okay, so the first one is who you think you are. The second one is who your friends think you are. And the third one is who you really are. And that's already more fun than just being like, oh, yeah, so what do you do for a living? Oh, cool, that's interesting. Oh, you're a lawyer. Okay. What do you do for fun? Oh, yeah, I like snowboarding too. It's already more fun and more interesting, and it creates more attraction between you when you play this kind of fun game and get to know each other that way. And there are tons of conversational games that you can play. Just Google search conversational games and pick a few that you like and try them out on your dates and see which ones are fun for you, and then use those, because if you're going to have fun, then she's going to have more fun too. So play conversational games instead of just interviewing her, and you're going to be more interesting and attractive. And then next, number 3, have some questions prepared in advance. Questions that you really want to know about someone. For example, I really like that question of, if you hit the lottery jackpot and you never had to work again, what would you do then and why? Because that really shows someone's values at a deep level, but it's doing it in a fun way. That's a question that I genuinely want to ask. I want to know that about her. So have some questions like that in mind that you can ask at any time on any date that you genuinely want to know about a woman. So think about that and make a list of like 5 or 10 of these questions that can get the ball rolling on these open-ended questions that let her talk a lot. And then you don't have to think of one while you're there in that situation and you're kind of attracted to her and you feel nervous and you're like, oh man, what should I talk about? You already know what kind of questions you want to ask, and you just ask one. And then she talks for a while, and then you ask her a follow-up based on what she said and let her talk even more. Or you share back something from your side a little bit, and then you ask her another open-ended question about a different topic. All right, so have some questions prepared in advance. And then next, number 4, be genuinely curious. If you actually want to know what makes her awesome, you're going to be more interesting and more attractive than if you're just doing it to kind of try to get her to be more attracted to you or because you think you have to. Increase your amount of curiosity. And this also means kind of taking her off a pedestal and kind of not necessarily not putting her down, but devaluing her looks as part of her whole package a little bit. So yeah, she looks good, you're attracted to her physically, you have chemistry, that's why you took her out on a date. But see beyond that a little bit and be genuinely curious about what makes her an awesome person or not. Maybe she's not that cool. Maybe she's a gorgeous serial killer and you don't want to keep dating her. Try to find out. Be curious about finding out about who she is. Because the more genuinely curious you are about her, the more interesting you're going to be to her and the more attractive you're going to be to her. So from now on, when you see a beautiful woman from across the room, don't just think like, oh, she's so hot. Yeah, that's normal to think that. But beyond that, think also another thought should come in like, I wonder what she's all about. I wonder what she's like. I wonder what her hobbies are. I wonder what her values are. I wonder what she really cares about. I wonder what she does for a living. Start being more genuinely curious about women, and you're going to be more interesting and attractive, and you're going to have stronger connections because you're going to have specific things that you're looking for in her personality that show you if she's a good fit for you or not faster. And then you can keep dating her or move on to the next woman who is right for you faster. So be more genuinely curious. And then lastly, number 5, do more things that you love more often so that you have more interesting things to talk about. If you're living a life that you really enjoy, you're more interesting than if you're not. So go do things that you really like so that when you're on a date and you're talking that 20 to 40% of the time, you have interesting things to share that you can talk about with some passion, with some excitement that makes it interesting for her too. For example, I love college football, and a lot of people don't even know what that is or care about it at all, and I realize that. However, I can talk about college football if I'm on a date because I'm passionate about it and because of the emotions that I feel from it. and the connection that it has to my family and growing up and how my grandma watched it with me. I can talk about it that way, where these emotions that we're feeling are universal. And because I'm passionate about it and because I have so many emotions attached to it, it's still interesting for a woman a little bit. As long as I'm not talking 80% of the time, she's going to be like, oh, wow, that's really cool that you like that and you have that connection with your family. She's going to be able to appreciate that part of it. Okay, so do more things that you love more often so that you have more interesting things to talk about in a more interesting way, in a more passionate and exciting way. And that's going to make you more interesting and more attractive as well, because now she's going to see you and your world, and she's going to either like that or not. And that makes you very strongly attracted to the right woman for you. All right, so that's how you can become the most interesting man a woman's ever met, or at least way more interesting than most guys she goes out with. And this is going to give you a big edge. And again, it's a lot less work because you don't have to think of the perfect thing to say next. You're just guiding the conversation while she carries it. And that's the biggest key to this, and most guys have no idea how big of a deal this is. So this can be kind of a secret weapon for you that makes all of your connections with women much stronger and more attractive. And when a woman feels strongly comfortable and connected to you and attracted to you at the same time, that's when she starts to fall in love, or when her attraction goes to the highest level, if you're not necessarily looking for a relationship right now. So from now on, when you have a conversation with a woman, you're going to be at least one of the most interesting men that she's ever talked to. And that's awesome. But if you want to completely master the art of attractive conversations, then we have a full program about that called Flirting Master. And inside the Flirting Master program, we talk about every single element involved in an attractive conversation from start to finish, so that your conversations always help you build stronger connections with women instead of being a potential obstacle for you. We talk about the formula that must be present in every conversation you have with a woman. We talk about the 11 mistakes you must avoid in order for her to be more attracted to you at the end of the conversation than she was when you first started talking to her, versus losing attraction. And we go over a lot of pro tips that take all of that foundation to the next level. So if you're interested in completely mastering the art of talking to a woman, go grab the Flirting Master Program right now. And you can find the link to the Flirting Master Program in the description below this video. And if you want to attract and keep the right woman for you and build a great relationship with her, then go grab our best-selling Attract and Keep Her system right now if you haven't already. Inside Attract and Keep Her, we go over exactly what to do with a woman from the first moment that you meet her until you're with her for 75 years to make sure that she falls deeply in love with you and stays deeply in love with you as long as you want to be with her. So if you're interested in being in a long-term relationship, go grab the Attract and Keep Her system right now at attractandkeepher.com/system. That's attractandkeepher.com/system. And of course, the link to that is in the description below as well. And if you're not necessarily looking for a relationship right now, and you're just going for hookups, but you want to do it in a way that feels really good for you and is good for the women you're dating as well, then go grab your copy of the Good Guy Guide right now. Inside the Good Guy Guide, we go over exactly what to do step by step from the first moment you start talking to a woman until she's at your apartment or you're at her place and you're escalating from there. So if you're interested in that, then go to datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com/GGG. That's datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com/GGG. And again, the link to that is in the description below as well. And lastly, as a thank you for listening to this presentation, we have some free gifts for you as well. We have some advanced free training for you and also a lot of articles, etc. on our website. And you can get all of that great free content by going to datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com. That's datingadviceformenwholovewomen.com. And if you go there, you'll see that there's even full programs for free, so you can see if you like our material before you buy something. And either way, I'm Jim Wolf with Dating Advice for Men Who Love Women, and I'll talk to you later.